Here's your homework over targets 12 and 13. So remember on target 12, we are just testing the vertices of the given feasible region. We don't have to come up with the feasible region here. So starting with number 1, you can see your objective function at the top. And then remember, we're going to use these vertices. So I'm just starting with 0, 6. And we're going to test them in the objective function. So plugging in x equals 0, y equals 6 for this one. So 0 minus 6 equals negative 6. And so just going around and testing all the vertices. So this is 2, 7. So c equals 2 minus 7 equals negative 5. The vertex at 5, 0. Just notice this graph is going by a scale of 2. So 5 minus 0 equals 5. And then the last vertex is at 0, 0. So c equals 0 minus 0, which is 0. So our minimum value, our smallest value, came from that first point. The value is negative 6, came from the vertex of 0, 6. Our maximum value is 5, and it came from the point 5, 0. So continuing down to number 2. So just same situation, new points. So here's your feasible region. Test your vertices. Notice that you do have a new objective function here. So we have 3 times x plus 4 times y. So that would be negative 3 plus 0, which is negative 3. I'm going to use 1, 3 next. So c equals 3 times 1 plus 4 times 3, which would be 3 plus 12, which is 15. 3, 2. Plugging it in. So this would be 9 plus 8, which is 17. And then our last point at 4, 0. Three times 4 plus 4 times 0. So this is 12 plus 0, which is 12. So your minimum was, again, this first point at negative 3. That was at negative 1, 0. The maximum value was 17, and that occurred at the point 3, 2. And then the last one like that, so again, just looking at your feasible region, nothing different. Although you do have more vertices on this one, it looks like. So I'm going to start with negative 3, negative 1. Testing it in the new objective function, so negative 2 times negative 3, and that would be minus 1. So that would be positive 6 minus 1, which is 5. 0.03. Plugging in 0 for x and 3 for y, so that would be 0 plus 3, which is 3. And we have 6, 1. So that would be negative 12 plus 1, which is negative 11. We have 6, negative 3. Testing that. So that would be negative 12 minus 3, which is negative 15. And then our last vertex, we have negative 3, negative 3. Testing it. So that would be 6 minus 3, which would be 3. Okay, so looking for our maximum value. Our maximum value was 5. That occurred at that first vertex I tested, negative 3, negative 1. Our minimum was negative 15, and it occurred at the point 6, -3. All right, flipping it over, doing some practice for target 13. So remember the difference here is that we're actually going to graph these constraints and then test the vertices that we find. All right, starting with x is greater than or equal to 0. So we talked about this on the notes. That's a vertical line at 0. And we're going to shade everything to the right. So we're basically just shading in this whole graph because this graph is just the first quadrant. But then it says y has to be less than or equal to 3. So now we're going to make this vertical line at 3, and it says less than, so we're going to shade to the left. So you can see that region that these two inequalities are sharing. And it says y is greater than or equal to 0, which means I'm going to shade above this line. And again, hopefully you're noticing where the red, green, and blue are all being shaded. And then y is less than or equal to 5. So I'm going to go up here to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make a horizontal line there. And I'm going to shade down because it says less than. So we're looking for the region that is shaded with green, blue, red, and black. And it's this rectangular region. I'm going to outline it here and color it in a little bit darker. It's that rectangular region. So if I list these vertices, there's a corner at 0, 0. That's this one. This point is at 3, 0. This point is at 0, 5. And this point right here is at 3, 5. All right, so we have our vertices. So now we're going to test it at the objective function. So the objective is c equals x plus y. So c equals 0 plus 0, which is 0. C equals 3 plus 0, which is 3. 0 plus 5, which is 5. And for our last vertex, that would be 3 plus 5, which is 8. So when we look for our minimum value, it's going to be 0. And that occurred at the point 0, 0. And then our maximum value was right here, 8. And that occurred at 3, 5. All right. And then our last problem from the homework. So we have an objective function and then just 3 constraints here. So x is less than or equal to 0. So if x is less than or equal to 0, that means when we draw our vertical line, if it's less than or equal to 0, we're actually going to shade to the left this time. And then it says y is less than or equal to 4. So I'm going to make a vertical line at 4 and also shade down because it says less than. So you can see that big rectangular region that they're both shaded. And then for this last one, we'll have to put it in slope-intercept form. So that would be y is greater than or equal to negative x minus 1. So here is negative 1 with a slope of negative 1. So going in both directions. So here's that line. And it says greater than or equal to. So I'm going to shade above. So again, I'm looking for that region that has red, green, and blue. And so that's going to be this triangular region right in here. Okay, so if we look at where the vertices are, so I can see a clear vertex at 0, 0. That one's easy for me to, or that's not, sorry, it's not even at 0, 0. This vertex is at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 4. And there's a vertex right here at 0, negative 1. And then this vertex here is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So negative 5, 4. So I'm going to test those three vertices in the objective function. So the objective function is x minus y, so 0 minus 4 is negative 4. 0 minus a negative 1 is like plus 1, so that equals positive 1. And then this last one, I would have negative 5 minus 4, which is negative 9. And that's also going to be our minimum value. So the smallest value is negative 9, and that occurred at the vertex of negative 5, 4. Our maximum value was 1, and that occurred at 0, negative 1. And there's your homework for targets 12 and 13.